I never expected a waitress's kindness would lead to my father's life-changing revelation. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. It was a Tuesday, but it felt like the sky was darker than it ever should have been. I was in that little diner, the one that smelled like burnt coffee and grease. My chest was tight, and my hands trembled as I stirred my coffee, watching the surface ripple like my thoughts chaotic, swirling, broken. My father sat across from me, his eyes sunken, shadows creeping into the lines of his face. We were supposed to have our usual chat about the week, but silence hung thick between us. He always had the best stories. That day, however, I could sense something was off. His smile, once vibrant, seemed to wither like the wilting flowers in the vase by the counter. Then came Emma. She was just a waitress, but there was something different about her. She had these bright, curious eyes that seemed to see right through me. She approached our table, her notepad ready, but she paused, studying us with a knowing look that sent chills down my spine. "Everything okay?" she asked, her voice soft but full of weight. My father didn't answer. Instead, he shifted in his seat, a tremor coursing through him, like he was battling something inside. He looked away, focusing on the half-empty ketchup bottle instead. I could feel the room closing in around us, the other patrons whispering, their curiosity palpable like the heat radiating from the fries sizzling on the griddle. Emma leaned in closer, her presence a fierce light in our gloomy corner. "You know," she said slowly, "sometimes just talking can change everything." Her words, unexpected and almost haunting, lingered in the air like the scent of fresh bread. I looked at my father, his brows furrowed, the tension tightening in his jaw. What did she know? Why was she here? It felt like the universe conspired to pull us into the gravity of this moment. And then, before I could decipher his emotions, something cracked within him. He took a deep breath, the kind that trembles with unshed tears. For a moment, it seemed like he would finally share whatever burden weighed on him. Suddenly, a loud crash reverberated through the diner as a plate shattered. The noise pulled me back into reality, the hushed murmurs around us rising to a crescendo. Emma turned sharply, her expression shifting, her earlier confidence gone. In that instant, I felt the air throb with unspoken truths, like a storm brewing. Then, my father's voice broke the charged silence. "I have to tell you something." But before he could finish, his phone buzzed violently on the table. The distraction sliced through the moment, leaving us on the edge of revelation, yet nothing changed, nothing was resolved. My heart raced as I reached for his hand, urging him to continue. There was an urgency in my chest, a need to know. What was it? What had he held back for so long? But there was only silence as he stared at the screen, his expression twisted with confusion. Emma glanced nervously around us, as if sensing the tide turning. The noise of the diner faded into the background. My mind raced, alive with questions. What was his secret? What would change everything? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The clamor of the diner surged again, patrons returning to their own conversations while I remained caught in the whirlwind of unsaid words. My father's face turned pale as he stared at his phone, the screen illuminating a stark truth, the urgent messages revealing something more troubling than I could have ever anticipated. My fingers tightened around his, an intuitive plea for him to break free from whatever had ensnared him. "Dad," I whispered, the softness barely audible over the clattering dishes. "Please, don't let this moment slip away." At last, he redirected his gaze to me, but the flicker of recognition was fleeting. It's complicated," he murmured, his voice a mere shadow of its former strength. He rubbed his forehead, squeezing his eyes shut as if trying to block out the world and the bitter truth still barricaded within. Emma glanced wistfully at our table, as though she felt the weight of our collective despair, her earlier vibrancy tempered by our darkened mood. I watched her approach hesitantly. "Is everything okay?" she asked, her concern woven through her words like a lifeline. My father straightened slightly, seeming to pull himself from the depths of some quiet hell, yet his spirit was dim. He began again, but the words twisted around his tongue. "What if we go outside? Just for a moment?" I suggested, desperate for a change of scenery to pry open the floodgates of honesty. Outside, the late afternoon air held the promise of renewal, thick and warm like the weight of his hesitation itself. He nodded slowly, and as we stood to leave, a flicker of movement caught my eye. One of the other customers, a man hunched over a booth, was watching us, his expression laden with sympathy, as if he had stepped out of a parallel reality where he understood us intimately. I shuddered under the intensity of his gaze, feeling oddly exposed. Once outside, the sounds of the city muffled into a distant hum. My heart thudded in a frantic rhythm as I turned to face my father. "Please tell me what's going on," I implored him, my voice raw with urgency. He inhaled deeply, his breath shaky and fraught with years of silence. It's not easy to talk about. A deep sadness washed over him, and I feared the truth he was about to unveil might shatter what little remained of the fragile relationship we had. "Whatever it is, we can face it together," I urged, this time gripping his shoulder. But just then, a child's laughter erupted nearby, jarring us back to the present. A little girl, obliviously cheery, twirled in the grass, the sun glinting off her golden curls. Her laughter was infectious, a tiny reminder that innocence still existed somewhere. My father's face softened for a moment, battling with the turbulent storm in his heart. "Your mother," he finally uttered, a trembling whisper that seemed to dim the warmth of the sun. "There's so much you don't know about her." The world seemed to shrink around us, collapsing into that single revelation. I blinked, ice creeping into my veins. "What do you mean?" This time, he stepped back, distancing himself from the weight of the words that swarmed us. It's about her past. Things I never wanted you to know. Things that could change how you see everything." Pain shot through me, an unexpected stab that twisted my stomach. Why had he kept this from me? What did she do? What happened? I pressed, feeling the shadows of the past closing in. Just as he opened his mouth, the sudden wail of a siren cried out in the distance, its sound becoming a sinister background track. If the world was shrouded in anguish, that noise was a clarion call that we couldn't ignore. And then, as if scripted by the universe itself, a man emerged from the crowd, rushing toward us. His expression was frantic, meant for more than mere coincidence. "Sir!" he shouted, voice strained. "You need to come now. It's about your wife." Every muscle in my body tightened as the echo of that statement morphed into something monstrous. My father's face turned ashen, a mixture of shock and dread, and the ground felt like it was being pulled from beneath us. "Dad! No!" I cried out, feeling something irrevocable fracture within me as he stumbled back, uncertainty clouding his eyes. What did that mean? What had she done? The fear was palpable, coursing through the veins of that moment like a swift river dragging us both into an unknown abyss. And as I grasped at the tendrils of hope that hung like whispers in the air, I realized that whatever truth lay ahead would demand everything from me. The world blinked into focus as the man's frantic urgency settled between us. "What do you mean about my wife?" My father echoed, his voice trembling as if trying to grasp the frayed edges of reality. The coffee shop's clamor faded into a memory, and I could almost taste the steeliness of fear in the air around us. "They said she's been in an accident. We need to go. Now." The man gestured wildly, and in that moment, the floodgates of panic burst open. My father's hand clutched his throat, and I rushed to his side, feeling his heartbeats drumming a chaotic rhythm against my palm. "Wait." I called out to the man, desperation tightening my throat. "Tell us more. Is she okay? His expression softened momentarily, but urgency still thrummed in his veins. There's no time. She needs you. I glanced up at my father, and in the hazy recesses of his eyes, I saw the fear morph into something deeper, a grief that stirred like a long-dormant beast. Would this somehow break him further? My heart ached for him, for us, as shadows loomed over the uncertain future ahead. Come on, let's go. The man grasped my father's arm, guiding him away, while my feet felt rooted to the pavement. Please, we're already late. With a shaky hand, my father turned to me, and there was a flicker, a spark of the man I had known, the one who held my hand through sleepless nights and reassuring dreams. Stay close to me, he said, and in those fractured words, I found an ember of hope. As we hurried toward the parking lot, pieces of our shared history flashed in my mind: the family holidays, the times we laughed until our stomachs hurt, and the silent moments that felt heavy with unspoken truths. But now it was his silence that felt weighty, a palpable tang of regret suffocating us both. I wrestled against the swirling dark thoughts burgeoned by the fear that clung to every word left unspoken. When we reached the car, I could feel the woman at the dinorama watching us with an urgency of her own, concern sewn into her brow. For a heartbeat, I wanted to reach out to her, to grasp her kindness like a lifeline in this ocean of chaos. But there was no time to spare. The world around us warped with the weight of unknowing. As my father slid into the passenger seat, I caught a glimpse through the window at the little girl still twirling in the grass. The stab of innocence felt like an anchor pulling me back, reminding me of the joy that so easily existed alongside our never-ending struggles. "Well, be okay," I whispered to myself more than to him. I fumbled to start the engine, my hands trembling against the wheel. What if something happens? The words slipped out, raw and unguarded. "Don't think like that," he snapped, his voice laced with tension, suddenly fierce. "Just drive." The road lay before us, winding and choked with traffic, the pop of headlights piercing the gathering dusk as we pulled away. My father's anxiety radiated in the air, thick and cloying, as we remained ensnared in our fear. "That I should have told you," he finally said, each word fracturing under the weight of what remained unsaid. I shot him a glance, betrayal and confusion tangling together uneasily in my chest. Told me what? But he was stuck in a memory, lost somewhere between us and where we were headed, and I felt an urge to shake him out of it. "Please, Dad. We don't have time." "That I thought if I kept the truth away, you'd be safe," he murmured, his voice dwindling. All this time the weight of my mother's secret loomed, pressing on my lungs. Safe from what? Before he could answer, my phone buzzed violently against my leg. I hesitated but ultimately let the anxiety steer my instinct and answered. "Hello, is this?" The voice crackled with urgency, tinged with a maternal softness that hung nostalgically in the air. "I'm calling for Ian's family. There's been an accident involving your mother." The world blurred for a moment, the edges of my vision darkening. "What do you mean? Is she? Please come to the hospital as soon as you can. Her condition is critical." The line slipped from my hands as I turned to my father, disbelief pooling in my gut like poison. The reality of what lay ahead twisted in the air, suffocating any stumbling words that tried to escape. I had thought we were fighting against the past, against hidden truths, but now we were racing toward a revelation that felt far more devastating. And with that realization came the crushing reality that everything I'd known was about to change. My father and I shared a glance, a fleeting understanding passing between us. This would not lead us to resolution, but rather, deeper into an unraveling conflict we were ill-equipped to face. I pressed harder on the gas, fear coiling in my chest, seeking the fragility of hope amid the dark uncertainty of what lay ahead. What had my mother done? What truth lurked behind the events that had stitched our lives together in this inexplicable web? And as we raced toward that hospital, the sirens of our lives weaved a haunting melody under the cacophony of unanswered questions, filling the spaces with the tales we feared and longed to unveil together. The waiting room of the hospital was a blur of white and gray, the antiseptic scent mingling with the sharp tang of anxiety. Impersonal fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting an eerie glow on the faces around me, faces marked with the same dread that gnawed at my insides. I gripped the plastic chair, the coldness seeping through my clothes and embedding itself in my bones as I waited for news about my mother. My father's silence was heavy beside me, a stark contrast to the chaos swirling in the corner of my mind. I could feel his emotions: fear, guilt, an undercurrent of helplessness radiating off him in waves. Every tick of the clock seemed magnified, counting down to something neither of us wanted to confront. The world outside continued to rush by, and I felt like we were trapped in an echo chamber, our singular reality bound to the fate of the woman lying somewhere beyond those clinical walls. Can't we just ask someone? Get an update? I broke the suffocating silence, my voice shaking as much from desperation as from the cold. My father turned toward me, eyes shadowed and distant. I don't want to hear anything unless it's good. I can't, but we can't just sit here, I insisted, a mixture of frustration and despair tightening my chest. What if we lose her? Don't say that. He snapped, then recoiled, his face crumpling in on itself as if the thought alone was enough to shatter him. I'm sorry. I didn't mean. I need to know. I pressed, desperate for some connection to the man whose fierce love had always protected me, the father who had once promised me everything would be okay, but now felt like a stranger lost in his own labyrinth of sorrow. A nurse swept through the waiting area, her quick movements barely registering on my father. I rose from my seat, heart racing. Excuse me. I called, crossing the space quickly. Can you please tell me what's happening with Ian's mother? She paused, shooting a quick glance behind her before offering a polite, yet pained, smile. I'm afraid I can't share any information without authorization. But I can tell you that she's receiving the best care possible. Her name is Mary. Mary Hastings, I added, frantically clinging to any thread of hope. The nurse nodded, but her expression barely changed. It was like watching a fragile piece of glass shatter in slow motion. As she walked away, the weight of my disappointment crashed into me like a tidal wave. Why isn't anyone telling us anything? I turned back to my father. Why isn't he here? His brow furrowed. Who? The man who brought us here. He said must know something. I realized then that he had slipped away, leaving us to face the unknown without either his guidance or his inexplicable urgency. Seconds strained into minutes as I fought the impulse to scream, to curse this world that so willingly cast us into darkness. My fingers absently traced the wooden laminate of the hospital chair, bumping into a crumple of paper that had slid beneath it. In the flicker of hope that often found a way to slink in at the most unexpected moments, I bent down to retrieve it. It was a plain white napkin, smeared with the remnants of what looked like charcoal. At first, it seemed trivial, worthless amidst my chaotic thoughts. But as I unfolded it, my breath hitched. It's a number, I murmured, tilting the napkin toward my father. The waitress Emma. She must have slipped it to me when I was paying. She said she could help. It's just a number, he said, his voice exhausted. But in his eyes, I saw the faintest flicker of curiosity. What if she knows what really happened? What if she enough? He slammed his hands against the armrests, veins straining against his skin. The shock of his anger rattled me, but beneath it, I sensed a deep, crippling despair. What do you think she could possibly know? Fleeting instant of guilt washed over me for pushing him, yet I shook it off, feeling the resolve swell in my chest. I don't know, Dad. But sitting here isn't helping. I need to find out what's going on. Can't you understand that? For the briefest moment, he seemed to weigh my words, the turmoil in his heart becoming palpable. But he glanced away, tears starting to glisten at the corners of his eyes. I don't want you to get hurt. I don't want you to see. What do you think I'm feeling right now? I interrupted, my voice softer but fierce. I can't just wait here, feeling helpless, while something is happening to Mom. I need to do something. Silence enveloped us again, heavy and bound by unspoken fears. That's when I saw it, a flicker of the man I once knew, buried underneath layers of grief and uncertainty. Please, Dad. I can't do this without you. He glanced back at the napkin, studying it as if it held the answers to the questions haunting us. After a pause that felt like a lifetime, he finally nodded, resignation etched across his features, though a semblance of determination sparked in his eyes. "Fine. Let's call." With trembling hands, I dialed the number, half expecting it to go to voicemail, but instead, a soft voice answered on the other end. "Hello? Emma?" I whispered, my heart pounding. "Yes, is this Are you okay?" Her voice was steeped in concern, and in it, I could hear the urgency that underlined her earlier kindness. I need to know what happened. "About my mother. Can you help?" A pause stretched between us, riddled with unspoken emotions that knotted tighter and tighter as I braced for her response. "I can meet you," she replied slowly, hesitation evident in her voice, "but you need to understand that this goes deeper than you think." "What do you mean?" The weight of her words echoed in the pit of my stomach as anticipation morphed into dread. Just as she began to answer, the hospital doors swung open, revealing a doctor whose grave expression spoke volumes more than his words ever could. A single question hung in the air between us, heavy and ominous. What had come to pass that those who cared the most would be pushed into a web of uncertainty, their lives poised on the precipice of irrevocable change? The sterile smell of antiseptic clung to the air as if it were an unwelcome guest I couldn't shake off. Clenching the napkin in my hand, I stared at the doctor as he advanced toward us, each step reverberating through my chest like the somber thud of a war drum. My heart raced, everything around me faded into a blur of muffled voices and the relentless ticking of the clock, rendering time immaterial. "Mary Hastings?" he clarified, his expression somber. I wanted to scream, but the words lodged in my throat. Instead, I simply nodded. Dr. Torres. I need to speak with you." He gestured for us to follow him, the gravity of his presence propelling us toward the depths of that clinical fortress. I caught a sidelong glance at my father, who seemed to shrink under the weight of the doctor's gaze. Once inside a small, undecorated room brightly lit and painfully sterile, the door clicked shut behind us. The four walls closed in, amplifying my mounting anxiety. "Your mother is stable, but she's in a very serious condition," he began, his voice low and measured, a stark contrast to the chaos swirling in my mind. "We need to monitor her for the next 24 hours, can we see her?" The question spilled from my lips, desperate and yearning, as I imagined my mother fighting against the tide of whatever darkness had swept over her. Dr. Torres glanced at my father, but something flickered in his expression, something that told me even this small comfort would not come easily. "I'm afraid visiting hours are restricted. Given her condition, it might be best if you wait until morning." "I know that's difficult. My father's voice cracked, thick with raw emotion. "You're asking us to just sit here while sir," the doctor interjected gently. "I assure you, we are doing everything we can." With that, my father's shoulders sagged, and a deep sigh escaped his lips. The flicker of hope I had clung to dimmed as uncertainty gripped me. Why? Why would she be in a very serious condition? "What happened?" Dr. Torres hesitated, tugging at his collar as he struggled for the right words. "Your mother was found unconscious in an alley behind the cafe. We suspect a combination of health-related issues. It's possible someone could have found her and sought assistance, but we haven't confirmed any details." Yet.an alley. The word pulsed in my ears as I fought against a rising tide of nausea. My heart raced, thoughts spiraling. My mind echoed with questions. Had she been alone? Had she cried out for help? But in that moment, they felt like daggers, cutting deep. I felt my father's gaze bore into me, a quiet horror intertwining with understanding. "Do you know who found her?" I asked, though part of me was terrified to learn the truth. "I believe the police were involved, but the doctor's voice wavered. They haven't informed us about all the details yet. There's still an ongoing investigation." "An investigation?" I echoed. The word lodged in my throat, turning it into something bitter. "What can we do?" Dr. Torres' face softened, his compassion palpable in the sterile room. "For now, all you can do is wait. But I will ensure that you're updated as soon as there are any developments." As he stepped toward the door, I grasped the napkin tightly once more, feeling its rough edges biting into my fingers, grounding me for the uncertainty that lay ahead. "Please," I called, my voice wavering ever so slightly. "What if I find out more information?" He paused at the threshold, offering a sympathetic look. "Follow any leads you can. Speak to those who might know her whereabouts." With that, he left, plunging us back into a silence that seemed to echo the very fears tearing us apart. I turned to my father, seeking connection amid the overwhelming dread. But even now, he was far away, lost in thought, trapped in that dark place he had buried deep. "Dad," I said softly, "we can't just wait. If there's an investigation, we have to find out what really happened." A flicker of understanding crossed his face, but shadows loomed large in his eyes. "What do you want to do?" "I don't know if I can." "Don't say you can't. We need to find Emma, the waitress. She might know more about the alley, about how this all." Before I could finish, his phone buzzed, the sound slicing through the tension like a knife. His expression changed, concern morphing into panic as he read the message. "It's about Mom," he murmured, his voice barely audible. "What is it?" I leaned closer, my heart pounding, hungry for any shred of hope. He took a deep breath, the air trembling with unspoken fears. "It's from Ian. He says there's a problem with his mother too, and he needs to talk. It's urgent." The words hung in the air like a storm cloud, full of impending dread. How could this be connected? I stammered, my mind racing to piece together the fragments of this growing nightmare. "I don't know," my father whispered, a mist of fear clouding his eyes. "But we need to meet him. Now." As we stormed out of the room, hearts racing, I couldn't shake the feeling that with each step, we were teetering closer to the brink of a revelation that threatened to reshape our lives forever. The darkness we were wading through thickened, hiding secrets that were desperate to be uncovered, a domino effect that began to unravel before us, pulling the very fabric of our existence into chaos. What lay in the shadows was becoming clearer, but so too was the weight of decisions yet to be made. The fluorescent lights flickered above us as we made our way through the sterile corridors of the hospital. Each step felt heavy, burdened by an invisible weight that pressed down as if the entire world had conspired to dim the light in our lives. My father's phone vibrated again, the screen glowing like a beacon in our fog of despair. "Dad, can't you just call Ian? We need to figure this out," I urged, a sense of urgency coursing through me. He shook his head, lost in thought. "He wants to meet in person. It's better that way." I glanced at my watch, time feeling like an uncooperative plaything. The hour was barely creeping forward, and I dreaded the emptiness that would fill our time while we waited for news. The hallway was empty except for the muffled sounds of distant conversation and the underlying beep of the machines that monitored those who fought their own battles behind closed doors. Each beep felt like a ticking clock, counting down to something I wasn't ready to face. As we approached the cafe where everything had begun, the place my mother worked and where I believed the answers to this chaotic puzzle could unravel, I caught a glimpse of a woman struggling to balance trays of steaming coffee and pastries. It was Emma. The waitress who had shared laughter and stories with my mother over countless shifts, who knew her well in ways I hadn't even begun to appreciate. "Mary. I was just thinking about you," Emma exclaimed, her voice tinged with a sorrow that spoke volumes. She dropped the tray onto the counter and rushed over, concern etched on her face. "I heard about your mom. Are you okay?" "Not really," I replied, my voice creeping into a whisper. My father shifted his weight uncomfortably beside me, the gravity of the moment wrapping us both in a cocoon of shared concern. "I've been meaning to talk to you. I saw your mom the night everything happened. She seemed different." Emma hesitated, her eyes darting to my father before returning to mine. "She was upset more than usual. I thought something was bothering her." "Why? What happened?" My heart raced, hope sparking at the edges of my despair. She was sitting alone in the corner, and I asked if she'd like to talk, but she just shook her head and smiled. "I thought she could use someone to listen." Emma paused, the weight of her words pulling us deeper into the shadows. Then she left. I don't know why she went out back. I didn't think anything of it then that I need everything you remember. Did she say anything? Did anyone approach her? Each question felt like a tether, drawing me closer to whatever truth lay ahead that I just remember she seemed scared, Emma said, her brow furrowed. I saw someone outside the window, just lurking, but I didn't think to mention it. I thought they were waiting for someone. I didn't even know it was your mom who was in trouble. My father bit his lip, anger mixing with sorrow. We need to find out who this person is. It'll help you, Emma offered urgently, as if breathing new life into our quest for answers. I can ask around. I know some people in the area who might know. I didn't realize it was so serious. Thank you, I whispered, a flicker of warmth kindling in a heart otherwise numb with fear. The urgency in the air shifted, that dreadful tension momentarily dissipating. A small kindness, an unexpected ally in this dark hour. We exchanged contact details, promising to keep each other informed as the gravity of our circumstances loomed. As we parted ways, the idea of hope, however fragile, began to set in. Just as we turned to leave, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number illuminated the screen. I know what happened to your mother. Meet me where the alley meets the street at 10 p.m. My breath caught in my throat, the world around me spinning with the implications of that message. Dad, look at this. He leaned in, the color draining from his face as he read the text. It could be dangerous. We don't even know who this is. I can't just ignore it. It might lead us to the truth. After everything, we owe it to her, I insisted, resolved in my pursuit even as trepidation gnawed at my insides. Mary, if it's a trap, no. We have to find out what happened. We can't keep waiting. The tension crackled like electricity in the air between us, my conviction forging a path through his doubt. As we locked eyes, I saw the steely glint of fear mixed with something deeper, an understanding of the risk but also a budding determination to find my mother's truth. It felt as if we were standing on the precipice of something monumental, the night ahead cloaked in uncertainty. With each heartbeat echoing like a warning drum, we stepped into the unknown together, ready to confront whatever darkness lay ahead, and what lay beyond that message could change everything for us. The air was thick with an eerie silence as we approached the alley where the road met the shadows. Each step reverberated with the rhythm of my anxious heartbeat, a haunting melody that played, accompanied by the soft rustle of leaves in the evening breeze. I clutched my phone in my hands, my knuckles white from the weight of it. Mary, my father said quietly, his voice breaking the stillness like a fragile glass vase teetering on the edge, we don't have to do this. We can go back. No. I interrupted, the fervor of my urgency spilling into the darkness around us. We have to know. The alley loomed ahead, a narrow pathway that laughed at the light. Street lamps flickered uncertainly, casting long shadows against the crumbling brick walls. We hesitated at the entrance, the stench of dampness and despair strong enough to taint our resolve, but there was no turning back. Just stay close, he warned, and I nodded, the chill of fear creeping into my bones. As we stepped into the alley, a figure materialized from the darkness, a man whose silhouette was framed by the faint glow of a distant streetlight. My pulse quickened as he stepped closer, revealing a hard face marred by years of hardship, a haunted expression that hinted at secrets buried too deep to extract. Are you Mary? He asked, the rasp of his voice sending shivers racing down my spine. I am. You texted me. His eyes narrowed as he studied my face, searching for something: truth, fear, desperation, or perhaps a spark of hope. I know what happened to your mother, he said, and my heart raced, as if it had finally found an anchor after being tossed along stormy seas. Tell me, I urged, feeling a desperate pull to the knowledge that could unlock the heavy door of uncertainty weighing down my heart. The man hesitated, glancing behind him as if to ensure we were alone. Your mother was involved with. You don't understand, my father cut in, stepping forward protectively. What do you know about her? Who are you? A flicker of annoyance crossed the stranger's face. I didn't come here for you, old man. I'm here for Mary, and the truth is heavy. My father's jaw clenched at the disrespect, but I reached for his arm, grounding him, finding strength in my resolve. Please. He has information. Instead of calming the tension, my request only seemed to deepen the man's unease. This is dangerous, he warned. She was into something much bigger than you realize, the kind of trouble that reaches far beyond a cafe. Just tell me. I demanded, clutching at the fleeting threads of hope that were quickly fraying. What happened to her? She witnessed something, he began, glancing around again, his voice barely a whisper now. Something she shouldn't have. People, they don't forget. They won't let it go. I felt as if the ground had shifted beneath me. You mean she was in danger? Is that why his sudden silence was palpable? Look, I can give you names, but you have to understand I can't protect you. His eyes locked onto mine, filled with a gravity that sent chills through my veins. You must be careful. There are eyes everywhere, and they're watching. Before I could respond, the distant sound of footsteps echoed behind us. My father's body tensed beside me, but before we could retreat back into the safety of the roadside, the man turned abruptly, disappearing into the shadows with a suddenness that left me gasping for breath. Wait. I cried out, longing to keep the hope burning, an ember in the vastness of darkness. I felt the weight of my father's hand on my shoulder, steadying me against the uncertainty that threatened to engulf us. That we need to go, Mary, he breathed, urgency dripping from each word. This isn't safe. That I can't leave. I pleaded, frantically scanning the darkness. He has more to tell us, but in that moment, when the footsteps grew closer, I understood the suffocating truth. Every second spent in that alley was a ticking clock, and the sound of danger loomed ever closer. As we turned to run, another figure emerged, a flash of light revealing a familiar face, a face I hadn't expected to see in this chaotic web of desperation. Emma. I exclaimed, terror clawing at my throat. Her eyes were wide, shock registering at the sight of us huddled in the dark. Mary, you shouldn't be here. I came to, but before she could finish, a sharp noise cut through the air, a rapid series of footfalls, and the threat of danger materialized before my very eyes. My heart plummeted as the shadows deepened, and the chase for the truth turned into a frantic race for survival, one that would alter all the paths that lay ahead. Run! My father yelled, as we surged down the alley, the cold air rushing past like whispers of the truth we were not yet ready to grasp. The echoes of danger chased us, but the thought of my mother clung to my heart, a fragile thread pulling me forward into the night and into the mystery that might just unravel everything we knew. The chase morphed into a chaotic blur, adrenaline sharpening every sense. My father and Emma flanked me as we dashed through the alley, our legs a frantic dance of desperation. I could hear the echo of heavy footsteps behind us, weaving through the darkness like a deadly melody. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once, but the thrill quickly dulled to dread when I thought of what I might lose, the truth about my mother. That we burst out of the alley into the moist night air, the coolness doing little to soothe my racing heart. Breathless, I turned around in search of a glimpse of our pursuers, but the shadows remained obstinately thick, withholding their secrets. The street stretched endlessly before us, illuminated just enough for me to recognize the familiar sights of our neighborhood home felt so close and yet achingly far. Where do we go? Emma gasped, her face pale with fear. Find a place to hide, my father urged, scanning the area as if the very air might hide the danger that loomed near. Civilians always attract attention, but even as we moved, dread coiled tight in my chest. What if they catch us? I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The streetlights flickered above, it felt like the city itself was holding its breath. Frantically, Emma pointed to a small cafe across the street, its sign flickering dully against the night. In there, she urged, and we rushed toward the doors, slipping inside just moments before fearfully glancing back at the darkened street. The warm air inside was a stark contrast to the night outside, but the comforting scent of coffee and pastries felt oddly suffocating now. The cafe was nearly empty, the only sign of life being the barista behind the counter, a young woman whose bright eyes seemed to sort through our chaos with ease. What's wrong? She asked, concern bubbling under her soft tone, and for a moment I wondered if kindness could mend the ragged edges of our fear. "Just a misunderstanding," I stammered, fighting to regain my breath while my heart tried to drum its own panic-riddled rhythm. "Grabbing drinks to go? Not quite the right time for a coffee break, huh?" She offered a soft smile, the kind that asked for warmth. "It's not safe for us," my father confessed, finally peeling his gaze away from the door, leaning heavily on the counter for support. "We're being followed." In an instant, the barista shifted. Her smile slipped just a degree, replaced by an earnestness that radiated genuine concern. "You should stay. This place has a back exit," she said, glancing around as if ensuring we were not already marked. "You look like you need protection." It was unexpected kindness, an unpolished stone amid the labyrinth of fear. "Why would you help us?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Because everyone deserves a chance," she replied, and in her words, something flickered, a glimmer of hope, a reminder that even in pitch-black night, small lights could exist. My father straightened slightly, the weight of the world still on his shoulders but perhaps lightening just a fraction. "Can we trust you?" The barista nodded, her gaze steady. "I promise. My name's Clara. You and your friends are safe here." And without another word, she disappeared into the stockroom, returning moments later with a set of plastic cups. "Here. I'll make you all some hot chocolate." As steam billowed from the cups, something stirred within me. "Thank you," I murmured, overwhelmed by her simple, selfless act. Thin threads of warmth entwined around our fear as the rich aroma filled the space, wrapping us in an unexpected cocoon of solace. But before we could allow ourselves to breathe fully, the peaceful moment was shattered. A sudden crash echoed from outside, drawing our eyes to the cafe windows just as a shadow passed by, large and looming. "They're here!" Emma gasped, her grip tightening around my wrist. Clara, who had been pouring hot chocolate, froze, her eyes wide with understanding. "Go!" she urged, glancing toward the back exit. "Now! I'll distract them." "No, we can't leave you," I cried, panic surging, but before I could protest further, my father grabbed my arm tightly. "We must go. Now!" His command held a finality that crushed any trace of hesitation I might have had. As we dashed toward the back exit, my mind raced with fear for Clara, an innocent caught up in our storm because of a simple act of kindness. Twisting the handle, we spilled out into a narrow alley, fingers trembling on the gnarled metal. The sound of footsteps was sharper now, approaching with a vengeance. I felt the world tilt uncomfortably, but just as I was about to push forward, a realization crashed over me with the force of a derailed train, a surge of dread that sank deeper than fear. "A name, Dad, what if my mother was protecting someone?" I asked, shaking the very foundation of my understanding. "What if she got involved to shield someone from danger?" But even as I spoke, one truth remained heavy and unyielding. My footsteps were still racing into unknown peril, with darkness lurking just behind the veil of our fleeting hopes. In that moment, I could only wonder if the shadows would engulf us all before we could uncover the depth of the past. The alley seemed to stretch on endlessly, a dark corridor between fear and uncertainty. My heart gnawed viciously at me, the thought of my mother's possible involvement in shielding someone, a life hidden behind layers of secrecy threatening to rip apart everything I thought I knew about her. My father's face, usually so steady, faltered under the weight of my words. "Just keep moving," he urged, the urgency in his tone sparking a fire that propelled us forward. The sounds of pursuit were no longer muffled, the heaviness of footsteps echoing louder with each stride, and I could almost feel the cold breath of danger coiling around us like a slithering serpent. Emma stumbled slightly, her breath shallow. "Is it true?" she whispered, glancing back down the alley as if the shadows might materialize into answers. "Could your mom really be involved in all of this?" "I don't know," I shouted, frustration boiling over. The tumult of emotions was a storm that clawed at my insides, the relentless churn of questions too great for any words to untangle. What if she was protecting someone? What if that's why she and Neil? My father's voice reclaimed authority, snapping me back to the present. More questions won't help us now. We need to keep moving, determined not to let despair take root. I pressed onward, fueled by his resolve. We turned a corner and skidded to a halt. Ahead lay a small park, shrouded in darkness yet punctuated by the soft glow of a solitary streetlight. As we crossed into its serenity, the last remnants of the cafe's warmth faded into the night. "That we can't stay here," Emma warned, glancing nervously toward where we had come from. My instincts screamed that peril would creep around every shadow, but I paused, thinking back to Clara's kindness. "Clara, she didn't have to help us," I murmured, my heart heavy with guilt. What if she's in danger now because of us? She knew the risks. "We have to focus on ourselves for now," my father replied, although his voice lacked its usual fortitude. Something fluttered in my chest, fear mixing with guilt. Yet beyond that turmoil was also a spark, a small flicker, a realization that stripped away some of the heaviness. "Maybe we need to uncover what she did," I said softly, the words trembling into the cool air before me. "Maybe it can help us make sense of everything." As I spoke, a rustling sound interrupted our thoughts, sending a thrill of alarm through us. I turned to see a figure emerge from the shadows, tall and cloaked in a coat that caught the faint light. My heart thudded in my chest, readying for flight. "Wait!" the figure called, hands raised in a placating gesture. "I'm not here to hurt you." My pulse raced. "Who are you?" I snapped, defending Emma and my father with my trust, fragile as it was. "Just someone who wants to help." He stepped into the light, revealing a face twisted with concern. Dark hair framed his brow, intense eyes narrowing as he eyed my father. "I know you're in danger, and it's more complicated than it appears. Who sent you?" My father challenged, his protective instinct surging forth. "Not a who. A what," the stranger replied, urgency threading through his voice. "There's a larger game on the table, and your mother was intricately caught up in it." The disconnect between my heart and my head first threatened to render me mute, then it lashed out with ceaseless questions. "What do you know about her? Why was she protecting anyone? Who were you to her?" "A friend," he said hesitantly, before visibly steeling himself. "But it's not just your mother that matters. You must understand the stakes. It involves lives, her life and possibly yours too." The weight of his words crashed over me, bringing fragments of clarity through chaos. "What do you mean? Are you saying she's alive? What's happening?" Hope clashed against my ongoing fear, and I could feel Emma's anxious gaze pinned upon me. "Not alive in the way you think. Your mother had to disappear to protect you, but she did it for a reason," he insisted, the conviction threading through his voice. "And those you're running from there after more than just your mother's past. They want you too." I stepped back, my thoughts whirling in an agonizing dance. "Why? Why me?" Before he could enlighten me, footsteps echoed again, heavy and determined, leaving no room for denial. The moment had arrived. A rush of adrenaline spurred me. "We have to go. We can't unleash whatever this is or stand around for the answers that may never come." "Where?" Emma implored, wide-eyed and trembling. "Follow me," the stranger exclaimed urgently, turning to lead us deeper into the park. "I know a place, a safe haven. But you must trust me." As we followed him, the dread clawed with each step, uncertainty throbbing in every shadow we passed. His presence was both a sliver of hope and an unsettling anxiety curled deep within. Just as we rounded a bend, I couldn't shake the feeling that the hunter had turned into the hunted. With every thud of my heart against my ribs, I couldn't help but wonder if we were still circling the dark pit of our past, as if danger ceased to chase us, but pulled us into the very storm we had thought we were escaping. Behind us, the echo of a sinister laughter intertwined with the night, and in that moment, hope felt like a mere breath away from despair, a fragile line that tightened with each painful step. I was slowly becoming aware of the dreamlike state I was in, my mind wrapped in the surreal. The darkness swirled around us like a dense fog, and I couldn't shake the feeling that danger lurked close, its breath on my neck, yet I pressed deeper into the night, into the unknown shadows, guided by a stranger whose intentions remained shrouded. Where is this safe haven you speak of? I demanded as we rushed through the park, my heart racing with fear and urgency. Just ahead, he said, urgency heavy in his tone. We'll be out of sight soon. Trust me, trust. The word echoed hollow but desperate in my mind as we darted through the trees. I wanted to believe him, to cast caution to the wind and cling to hope, but with each step, my doubts tangled tighter around my heart. My past, the shadows of my mother, the uncertainty of her choices, and the ramifications of our current predicaments whirled like a storm in my chest. Is it safe? Emma asked, her breath coming in quick bursts, fear etched on her face. Yes, the man assured her. For now. You have to believe me. And that haunting gaze of his seemed sincere, but sincerity didn't shield against danger. As we entered a clearing, a dilapidated building came into view, its structure crumbling with age but still standing defiantly. The door creaked on its hinges as our guide pushed it open, revealing a dimly lit room cluttered with remnants of a life once lived. The air hung thick with dust, but the sanctuary it promised was palpable. Inside, he urged, ushering us forward. I exchanged a nervous glance with my father, who remained stoic, eyes dancing between fear and a flicker of resolve. Together, we stepped into the dim light. What is this place? My father suddenly asked, breaking the silence that pressed heavily against our shoulders. Our lifeline, the man replied, his voice steady. A temporary safe house. There are people who can help you. He paused, swallowing hard. But you have to tell me everything you know about your mother, about her past. Time is of the essence. The weight of the request hung in the air as I deliberated whether to unveil the threads of the past. She worked in a cafe, I stammered. She was more than just a waitress, she had connections, I just didn't know how far they reached. My father remained silent, eyes fixed on the walls, immersed in thoughts of his own connections. He echoed. Why would she need connections? She was just my wife and your mother. This just your mother might be an understatement, the stranger insisted, urgency threading through his voice. If she was trying to protect someone, it could very well be because she was intertwined in something bigger than you understood. Tension crackled in the air, each of us at the edge of transformation. The old identities we had existed as were fracturing, and in their place, new revelations threatened to bloom. We have to find her, I whispered, my voice shaking, feeling the weight of the world return to my shoulders. Together, my father finally said, turning to me with a fierce determination, well, find the truth, no matter the cost. The room suddenly felt smaller, and as the heavy silence enveloped us, I glanced toward the stranger. What do you know? He hesitated for a moment before speaking. I can lead you to someone who knows more, a survivor of what your mother had witnessed. You must listen. There's a reason she entered that darkness, and it's imperative you understand before you go forward. Then let's go, I urged, heart hammering against my ribs. Let's find her. Not yet, he said, shaking his head. We need to lay low for now. They'll be looking for you. The weight of those words sunk in, a reminder of the danger still lurking, shadowing us like an unwanted companion. But even in stillness, a resolve began forming in my chest. There was a flicker of courage poised to break the surface. Tell me the truth, then, I demanded, looking the stranger square in the eye. Why is this happening? Who are they? There are forces beyond what you can see, he explained slowly, his voice thick with secrets. Your mother stumbled into something dangerous, a world she believed she could control. Stumbled? My father's voice cracked, disbelief and anger colored his tone. If this world is dangerous, why didn't she come to us? Why would she endanger her family? She thought she could protect you. The stranger paused, his gaze sweeping across our apprehensive faces. But dreams carry shadows, and once they're entangled, they're hard to escape. I shuddered at the implication, and an ache climbed up my throat. But what does this all mean? Does she have enemies? Why would they target us? As he opened his mouth to respond, a loud crash reverberated from outside, shattering our fragile moment of clarity. Quick! Hide! The stranger hissed, urgency bleeding into his words. My heart raced as we scrambled to find safe corners, moving with frantic energy toward a dusty closet shrouded in shadows. My father enclosed us inside, just as the door swung open, and light spilled through, illuminating the room in stark contrast. "That I know you're in here." A voice boomed. Come out wherever you are." The tremor of fear vibrated through me, merging with adrenaline. The stranger pressed a finger to his lips as we held our breath, the world outside folding into the chaos. Time seemed to stretch indefinitely as the voice continued scouring the room, calling out threats, weaving promises as if it would lure us from our refuge. "That I can help you," the figure said, and for a moment, the world felt as if it were balancing on the edge of a knife. "Don't you understand? You're being hunted. The hunt ends tonight." The words hung in the air, thick and suffocating, and as despair threatened to envelop me, I felt a surge of defiance blossom within. "Father, they may be after us, but we have to know." The moment felt so monumental, bursting with the weight of emotions I could hardly name. "What did you say?" came the voice again, crackling with renewed determination. In that fleeting moment of chaos, I made a decision. When the door creaked open wider, and the world beyond awaited, I wouldn't just step into the unknown to face the shadows. I would charge head-on into the truth unfolding in front of me, no matter how dangerous and steeped in darkness it would be. The stranger stepped aside, arms crossed, while I emerged from the closet, joined by my father and Emma moments later. I squared my shoulders, my heart thundering with a mix of fear and resolve. "I can't be afraid anymore," I declared, the sentiment ringing surprisingly true. "Not if it means finding my mother, not if it means understanding her choices. I will face whatever it is I must." The echo filled the room, reverberating in a way that felt new and unmistakable, a clarity sweeping through me, propelling me forward into the maze of uncertainty. Fear coiled tightly, but it was now tinged with a fierce determination I never knew existed. "Let's end the hunt," I said, heartened by promise and expectation. Together, we turned towards whatever lay beyond the door, ready to unravel whatever truths awaited us on the other side, whatever secrets were rising to the surface of our lives, waiting finally to be reclaimed in a tapestry far larger than we ever imagined. With every step echoing courage in our hearts, I knew, the truth would not just bring closure to my mother's story. It would forge a new beginning for us in the unraveling from the shadows. And as we pushed forward, a single thought anchored me deep in resolve: every shadow holds a secret, but secrets reveal the heart of the light.